Here we go, OverDrive, off and running, TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan on a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Toronto.
Beautiful. Woo.
Beautiful weather.
Yeah.
Great way to go into the weekend. I love it.
Golfing?
Yes, beautiful. You have to. You got to take advantage, man. We talked about that
Nice.
yesterday. Have to take advantage. And it's big patio weather, man. I told you guys I was downtown earlier in the week on a Tuesday night, and the patios were rocking. And I can only imagine what it will be like on a Friday. Jays in action, Tiff in town. You can't beat it. Can't beat it tonight.
No one loves a patio more than a Torontonian/Canadian.
Yes.
That is
It's
a
true.
fact.
The best. The best. And I found actually not going downtown a ton anymore now that I'm in the stage of life that I'm in, that the patio explosion is legit. Like, maybe it was a COVID thing. You know, everyone kind of took different things from COVID, but like the street patios that are out on the sidewalks and stuff, those never really disappeared, and I like that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. The more the merrier. Keep it open. Keep it optional, right? Make sure people, they want to go inside, go inside. You want to be outside, be outside.
Hazy, I love
thing.
going downtown, pal, but I only got one problem. You would think if you were going to take on, and I don't really want to do a deep dive into this, but if you were going to take on a project like the DVP or the Gardner, I've driven by the Gardner probably 35 times this summer and going to work a couple times. There's 4 guys working on it. It's like it's a big project. Maybe get more than 4 guys. Let people go down there and not be a pain.
And
There's
here's the
4
thing.
guys total. That's it.
It is hard. It is hard. Like we recently had a street just torn up right by our house. Literally day one when the kids were back to school. I'm like, where the hell was everybody this summer? Like, it was day one coming back to school. Now it's just the gong show, Main Street into town, torn up. You're like, where were you in August?
I know.
Like,
I know, but everything's about the bureaucracy and the red tape, and we got other jobs. And I will say this. It's becoming kind of a theme within the city. I don't know if you guys saw Will Ferrell's in town for TIFF, and he said it took him 30 minutes to go a block. We got to stop asking people about that stuff, though, right? Like, no one goes to New York and goes, tell us about our traffic. And everyone understands New York's crazy. Manhattan's crazy. We get it. You know, there's bigger and better things to talk about in New York. Let's do that with Toronto. Let's avoid talking about.
But don't you find they bring it up?
Sometimes. But, again, if you live in L.A. or you live in New York, which all these Hollywood actors generally do. I mean, this can't be that much different than what they have to deal with all the time either.
Apparently, though, isn't Toronto rated worst traffic in North America
Who's
now?
coming up with those, though? You know,
Well,
I'm sure it is high on the list. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting it's not an issue.
I think it's number one, and I live here and I travel North America quite a bit. It has become unbearable, and I understand, but you're right. I've lived in L.A., I've lived in New York, I've lived in Houston. I've lived in some of these big cities in the States. And it is a part of life. I think the reason why it's brought up, Brian, this is probably more, is it's shocking. Like, you know, people don't think of Toronto going, oh, you know, they think of Canadian city, beautiful city, you love aesthetically. Vancouver and Toronto are very beautiful, like big cities in Canada. But it's kind of like that shocking, like, that's the worst
Well, Americans
traffic.
are
Now
always
I live
ignorant to that. You talk to Americans,
you're right.
they're, you know, some guy from South Carolina from a town of 400 people. And he's like, I can't believe how many people are in Toronto. Like, stunned by how big this city is until you actually come here.
Yeah,
and it's a
huge.
massive metropolis with millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
But the approach to traffic is really interesting based on where you're from. You know, where you live. If you live downtown Toronto, if you live in Manhattan, you live in Hollywood or something, it's just the way it goes. And it's massive traffic and construction, and it's a daily occurrence for you. You get to a smaller town and they shut down one street. People don't know how to handle it. Like, they have no idea. It's happening up by me. They're doing construction on this one street, and it is a talking point for everyone that's lived out here their whole lives. Like, can you believe the traffic? It took me 7 minutes to get over there the other day. It's like, you have no idea.
True.
And by the way,
no
those
idea.
people, like everyone, there's kind of a general rule for some of my family in King City. It's like, You won't catching me south of Highway 7 dealing with that traffic.
Right.
They ain't coming down here to it, man.
That's the line. Highway 7 is the line.
Dude, it is. They're like, I'm not. Where's the function south of Highway 7? No, can't do it. I'm not driving down there. Yeah. It's just too much traffic.
Might as well be in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, really, it's the same distance because they ain't going.
Yep.
They ain't
You're
going.
right. The traffic is. The traffic, I mean, I think what it is if you don't have a common bond, traffic, you can talk to anybody about traffic or weather, right? It's like, hey, the weather
Always
or the
relative.
traffic. Like those, you got nothing else instead. You don't want to dive into the politics or dive into, world affairs, which, is crazy right now. But it's, if you just want a safe, neutral thing, it's like everyone can bag on traffic.
Yep.
Everyone can complain about the weather.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's like neutral. It's Switzerland when it comes to it, right?
We can all do it. We all have similar takes. It's a safe zone. It's a safe zone for everybody.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Herm Edwards coming up later this hour. Frankie Corrado. You hear Frankie doing a solo show today? Knocked it out of the park. Frankie is becoming a media personality that you need to watch out for because he's doing it all right now. And
What happened?
Corrado, well, he just filled in for Al's brother because Al's brother's on the ayahuasca retreat. So he was like, I want to host, and I guess they said, go ahead. It's your show. So he was in there today, and Frankie will join us, actually, to break that down, among other things, in about an hour. But Herm Edwards, Luke Wilson, there's a lot of things to get into from last night and the aftermath of what happened last night. And obviously the Tua scenario is first and foremost, and we will touch on that momentarily. But I will say that injury and the storyline that comes with it and the reaction to it has overshadowed the reality of what happened last night, that the Bills went down there and absolutely punked the Miami Dolphins.
Spanked them.
They absolutely bullied them. The offensive line, the defensive line, they ran all over them. James Ford, 3 touchdowns. That's the running back we've been waiting for a long time. If you're a Bills fan, he looked like a stud last night. He looked great last year. Josh Allen, it's like, come get me. You can't stop me. That's how good I am, especially on a short week in your house. Yeah. Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins, they can't beat good teams. They cannot beat good teams, and they cannot beat the Bills. And now you got a pace car in the AFC East, and it's Buffalo.
I think the people turn out like the news saying is, this is not a real city. It's not a real. I don't think Miami's a real team, man. I'm sorry, and it's embarrassing when you're confident of a pick like that, like me and my partsy made last night, and to watch them go out there and absolutely get their ass handed to them like that.
Yeah,
it's like
that was.
I don't know what you feel like, Hayes, but you're like, how did I even feel confident in Miami making that pick, watching them play like that?
Yeah.
Like, it was just a dummy fest.
You know what's interesting about that? We're going full circle here. A lot of it comes down to the trends. The trends that you guys were mocking yesterday, understandably so. But the Dolphins are 1-11 in their last 12 games versus teams with a winning record.
Wow.
Like, that says it all. You play a good team, they cannot compete. They can't beat them. They can't keep up with them. And not only do they lose, they're getting spanked. They got beat up by Buffalo yesterday. They went to Kansas City in the wild card weekend last year and got really embarrassed. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, it was the weather and all that. Still, you're a football team. You got to man up. You got to step in. You got to play. You got to battle. You got to fight for position. Every inch counts. And Miami doesn't have it in them as a team. And I think Mike McDaniel kind of represents that as the coach. And I agree with that assessment, and I think it's even more pronounced now that Tua is likely out for a long, long time.
Well, he should be.
He should be. I've been a little bit uncomfortable with the reactions today, and I'm curious how you guys feel about this as former pro athletes, because a lot of NFLers I've noticed, and a lot of people throughout the game are saying he should do this, he has to do this, and he very well could. Maybe he should. I don't know. I think it's Tua's decision ultimately, but now it's like the reaction has been so overwhelming, saying you have to retire now. You cannot continue your career. It's almost as if he gets cleared and he does play again, it's like people are going to question whether or not he's doing the right thing, or he's making the right decision, or he's putting himself before his family or something. Like, I'm just uncomfortable with the idea of it being so over the top, like you have to do this now. You have to retire.
Yeah, I got a pretty rich tweet from Des Bryant there to say you have to retire.
Right.
Look, there was some knowledge and maybe some information that wasn't available when Jamie and I were playing in the NHL, and sometimes some stuff was just like, you got a headache, it was swept under.
Got your bell rung.
You got your bell rung and you got hit hard and you'll be good in a couple days. But I think with the information, I think he has a decision. All it is a decision to make with himself and his family and doctors and smart people. And somebody has to give him the information and say, if there's one more, this is what it could look like for you. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing for him to realize, that it's ultimately you're going to pull the trigger on this choice for yourself. You're going to come back and play, or you're not going to play. But if you do come back and play and you're deemed 100% healthy, and with the information that we have, if you get hit one more time, this is possibly what it could look like for you. And it might not be that good. And he might have already had that conversation before this concussion.
Right.
Like when he had 2 in a row quickly there, I'm sure somebody said to him, look, man, if you get another one, it could be bad news for you.
Okay, so you're 100% right. And I think there are people that have played the game that are weighing in because they probably know how hard they've been hit, and they probably had concussions and all of that. So they're probably speaking from experience. I'm speaking from a fan on the outside. Yes, I've had concussions, and I can speak to it from the hockey side. When I think of Tua getting hit, do you remember his hand being all like weird? Like
yes, and there was an element of that last night too.
But that's so. All I can think of, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Because when is the next? If he plays again, it's going to happen again. It's just, I don't know if it's the way he plays, the position he plays, whatever. It's going to happen again. And the ramifications, again, there is more information out there. I don't know if, I can't speak for him. It's his life. He's going to make those choices. But at the end of the day, as a fan, at some point he may not get up. Mm-hmm. He may not, I've heard the word, and I would never want to. It was brought to my vegetable. What if this guy ends up not all there, or having some sort of an injury where he's paralyzed or whatever? It's just, there's so many things. I thought that last night. I was like, this guy, if he has another like this, or the ramification, he may never get up, or he may not.
Exactly. And again, to clarify my position as a fan, I'd prefer I didn't watch him play again because of what you're saying. It's very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to see any athlete go through that. But what I'm saying is, it's like there's this pressure from the league now and players within the league, and a lot of them retired players, where it's as if he gets cleared and he decides to play, it's like he's the bad guy. Why are you playing now? And that I found a little bit. I don't
think bad guy, Brian. I think people would look at it as not the bad guy, just you're incredibly stupid.
Like reckless or stupid. And listen, he may not get cleared again. Or if he does get cleared, he's going to have that decision to make, that this just isn't worth it. And if I were in his shoes, I think I would personally say I can't do this anymore because I'm putting myself in a bad place. Last year, he was healthy. Last year, he had a great season, and hence why he got the contract he got. He got a massive amount of money, and that's an element of this too. And that's the darker area of pro sports, and especially football and the NFL, is if he gets cleared to play and he decides to retire, he won't get the rest of the guarantees. If he doesn't get cleared to play and he can't play anymore, he will get the rest of the money. And I'm not saying the money's the number one issue here right now. Absolutely not. It's easy, again, for me to say that. It's not my money. And Tua's made a lot of money, and he's had a great life and a great career to this point. But it was very difficult to watch, and it's clearly something that continues to pop up with him. But I guess I'm just saying it's up to the medical doctors to make that call, to present every possible fact they can, be open and honest with him, which is a good sign of where we are in 2024, that is fully to be expected. To your point, back in the 80s, it would be, hey, take this, take that, get back in there. That's not going to happen this time. And his head coach, I give him a lot of credit. Mike McDaniel, I thought, handled it really, really well last night. Speaking to him on the human level, him as a person, him as a friend. You got to do what's right for you, not what's right for the Miami Dolphins or the NFL. And I think I guess that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, it's gonna be up to Tua, not everyone else saying this is what you have to do. And listen, if he returns, it's going to be very uneasy to watch. Wow. It will be. Let's call it what it is.
Well, how uneasy was it to watch him? And I think it was Cincinnati where he came back and he had that one right again. That was uneasy. How much more uneasy is it going to get with this guy? But he's got to talk to what is it? Drew Luck retired early because of injuries, did he not?
Yeah, there's been
Megatron.
Andrew Luck did.
Andrew Luck, sorry.
Yep.
Andrew Luck retired. Megatron retired. Like a bunch of guys have just stepped away. I think Chris Long was like, he just
Chris
said,
Long
"I'm not playing this. I'm not doing this any longer." So I don't know. I can't. I honestly can't see him doing it. I just think that his family steps in, or somebody's going to get in front of him and say, "Man, this is too much, and you can't go anymore." Mm-hmm. But he's got to make it's ultimately going to come down to him, because I'm sure somebody's going to say, "You're cleared to go back out there." That's going to be the king daddy topper of decisions, Hayes, when somebody says, "You are good to go back out there," and it's whether he does or not.
I hope somebody says to him, "You're at some point you're cleared to have a good life." Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, you think of the life. I don't know if he's married with kids. I'm assuming he's, got a personal life and all of that. But it's more about if he could get back to a baseline where he doesn't have ill effects for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. That we don't hear stories about him being in a dark room at 48 years old where he's having headaches and struggling and all of that, because that's the stuff that gets left behind.
That's
right?
Scary stuff.
That's the stuff. And we all have friends that have gone through it in various sports and all of that. And, I think I'll bring O's comment early on. Our concussion knowledge compared to where it's at now from when we played and growing up, all of that, it's different. Education has helped. But in this scenario, it's a life decision for him, but from a business standpoint too. Miami's doctors might just say, we think this is best. We're going to advise you to this. And if it's a money issue, they work that out, that he's taken care of for the rest of his life and him and his family and all of that. But it's about a health fact. This isn't
First
about the
and
sport.
foremost about
this
health.
isn't about the
and
sport
that's clearly
anymore.
what was coming out of last night. Was
and
like
guys,
Tua, the person.
He's probably not shocked. Not that he's shocked, but he was probably informed, like, by the way, man, like, this is probably going to happen again, knowing the sport you play. And with your history, you're the quarterback of the team. You're always in dangerous positions. Like, what happened last night probably did not shock Tua.
No.
Like, he probably knew that day was coming, and he probably knew the decision he was going to make after that play was coming. So he's probably got it in the back of his mind what was going to play out in this scenario anyway, to be quite honest with you.
Probably
he's not a dummy. He's not a dummy. He knew that day was coming.
Yep, and probably, I'm sure, was hoping it would be, 5 years later,
down the
10
road.
years later, exactly. And even the way he walked off last night, where he seemed to be with it. Easy for me to say, I don't know, but it was basically just, I'm out of here. And they made the announcement really quickly. Like, it was almost within minutes. He's ruled out concussion.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a scenario where we'll let you know after the game, we're going to run some tests. It was basically like immediately this is what's happened. And it's tough to watch. Like, it is tough to watch, and it's the nature of the game. There's not much you can do, unfortunately, in a sport like football, a sport like hockey, where these are just massive human beings. Like, the irony of it all last night was it was Damar Hamlin he ran into.
Yeah.
Like, Damar Hamlin came up and did his job and stopped them, and Tua left, and we don't know if we'll see him play again.
Well, I did see some, like, criticism is the wrong word, but I did see some people saying, this guy has a history of concussions. Why is he not doing the QB slide?
Why not
feet
slide?
first?
Give yourself up.
Why are you trying to go down the middle? Like, there is some.
If you're just going to break down the play, Jamie, it's a valid point. It's like, with your history, with the ability of getting hit in that scenario, like, what on earth are you leading with your head for to begin with? Like, there was easily enough time there for him to slide with his feet first. But he chose not to and lead with his head. It's like I don't know.
He dug in. It might have just been instinct. He probably did it his whole life, and I'm fine and I can do it. My whole thing is, now you can't wrap yourself in bubble wrap, but you have seen guys. We talked about Aaron Rodgers coming back. He was a little bit tentative, hesitant, maybe worried about people getting on his ankle and stuff. Like, you would think this guy would play to the point where it's like, I know I'm going to have contact, but if I'm going to. Like, he wouldn't initiate. He initiated that contact.
He
but
really
went
did initiate
into
the contact.
To be honest,
and yet, as we're all taught when you're kids, if you're going in scared, you open yourself up to more injury.
Yeah.
Like if you're constantly stopping, if you're constantly looking around, if you're constantly hesitating in any capacity, and I'm not just talking about head injuries, I'm talking about anything, taking contact on, that's when you can put yourself in sometimes a bad spot. But yeah, I mean, the Tua situation, obviously it's not going to be a story that goes away anytime soon. And I can't imagine he plays anytime soon. But I guess I wouldn't be shocked if he did play again. You know, we don't know when, how, if he'll be cleared, what it will look like. It will be his decision. But in the moment, you know, you jump on it and you say, this can never – like even Damar Hamlin, when that was going on, you're like, we'll never see Damar Hamlin again. He's playing. You know, it's an incredible story. And this is different. That was cardiac arrest. These are head injuries. And head injuries, they're just so scary. And there's so many lingering issues that you're going to have to deal with. If you've had one, if you've had five. So we'll see what Herm Edwards has to say on that. More coming up in about 10 minutes. His take on Josh Allen and the Bills as well. Again, Tua clearly overshadowing the game, but the Bills looked really, really good last night. Frankie Corrado coming up. We've got a number of things to get into today, including the fact that it's Friday the 13th. It's early for the Michael Myers music, but I think we're going to play some of it. Spin around the country in terms of some NHL news. That's coming up a little bit later on as well. And Dear Hazy B is back at 6:30. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Herm Edwards coming up here in a few moments. Frankie Corrado coming up as well. We're off to the President's Cup in just over a week and a half, and TSN 1050 wants to send you on a royal road trip to the President's Cup in Montreal. If you heard the keyword announced today on First Stop, call us right now at 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. The first caller through with today's keyword qualifies to win the trip. You could win flight, accommodations, $500 spending cash, and 2 tickets to see the world's top players compete at the Royal Montreal Golf Club. Full details at tsn1050.ca. You see, Tiger slid in a back surgery this morning. Out of nowhere, that
is this guy
just got released. That
pack it in.
Talk about packing it in, like, oh my God.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, I'm always uncomfortable telling athletes, hey, shut it down. You got to stop. Like, it's their lives, it's their careers. But it is uncomfortable when you see, especially a legend at the end of the road, just hanging on. And Tiger's an example of that. Like, I love having him around, and it's kind of cool to see him, hit a stinger every once in a while or rolling a big putt. But if you're going to miss the cut every single tournament and pull the shoot on tournaments and stuff, I don't see how it's going to get better for him moving forward.
I don't think it is, but it's funny you said, well, telling people to pack it in. As fans, we have no problem telling a guy whose performance and they're 40 years old going, you're too old, get the hell out of the game, all of that. But when it's injury related, especially a guy like Tiger, we were just talking about Tua before, sensitive situation too with head injuries. With Tiger, I mean, this guy is right in front of our eyes for a lifetime, has had injury after car accident after.
Crazy.
I love the report. It
Crazy.
was like he had a surgery for a nerve impingement in his back so he doesn't have back spasms all the time. I'm like, this guy's got one leg. I didn't even know that back spasms were an issue for this guy.
Exactly. I don't remember that being on the injury report for Tiger.
The big thing was his foot and his plantar fasciitis, and he's got one leg and his legs pieced together, and now it's back spasms and nerve problems. It's like, dude, come on, man.
But that's what's scary about Tiger. I remember speaking with a doctor friend of mine who always said the back, that's the bigger issue and concern. Like we were just talking about Tua, like if you suffer another head injury, it may get to a point where you can't live your life, like you're really just not yourself ever again. And he said the same thing with Tiger. It's like when you're messing with the spine in your back and you're having fusions done, like you're really risking trouble. Like the back just will not stop. Like it will not just be fine. And, plantar fasciitis may come and go. You have some spasms here or there. They may come and go. If you have like real spinal issues, sound like Mike Tyson, it's spinal. But you have that kind of stuff going on, like that's really going to affect the way you're living and the way you're playing. Yet, in his press release, Yeah, and you're moving and all that kind of stuff. Yet in his press release, he said he looks forward to getting back to everyday activities, including golf. So
Yeah.
Tiger's still playing. Tiger will be out there. I'm sure he'll be at Augusta. He'll probably be at Riviera in February, I would think. Maybe at the Hero Challenge down in the Bahamas. I don't know.
What's up with this 3-on-3 league, too? Like, does he still have that?
I don't even think that's going to take off.
I don't think that's
sounds
going
like
anywhere.
Somebody's crumpling the papers to that and putting them in a shredder.
Well, wasn't it in like a warehouse or something? Or, it was like, hey, we're going to do this. Like, it was unique, wasn't it? It wasn't
it was in like a not a top
indoor golf,
but,
yeah, like simulator type stuff. I got to be honest, it sounded like the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. I don't know how that works. I want to see a guy on a great golf course hitting golf shots. I don't want to see them indoors. And as much as I'm a golf watching addict, I had a great time watching the Solheim Cup today. But I'm not watching guys indoors. I'm not watching Rory versus Tiger indoors. No way, no how.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to fly either. And there was some issue they had with one of the facilities down in Florida that set them back. And then remember John Rahm pulled the chute, and the whole thing just collapsed. And I don't think anyone's even asking them about that anymore. They probably love that no one's asking them.
Yes.
Because that was a big plan for them, and it just kind of disappeared. Like, talk about just sweeping something under the rug, a massive business plan. Yeah, we're just not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Don't worry about asking. All right.
In the works. They're going to keep saying in the works.
In the works. Exactly. It's like 3 Jack National. You know that. It's in the works. It's on its way. All right. Here's a longtime NFL player, head coach, ESPN NFL analyst. Here's Herm Edwards back on Overdrive. How you doing, Herm?
I am well. And if you're a Buffalo Bill fan, you're obviously feeling pretty good about yourself. And
I would
you're a Miami
say so.
fan. If you're a Miami fan, you're trying to figure out, what your future looks like and what are you going to do about it?
Well, let's begin with the Bills because I was so impressed with the way they played last night and the way they stepped into that stadium and immediately took over the line of scrimmage, immediately started pouncing on the Dolphins. And it wasn't great in week 1, but they got the job done against Arizona. That was a statement last night, Herm, and I'm curious how much of a statement you think the Bills made.
Well, I think it's a statement in this sense. They've got a new identity, obviously, and it's more of a we're going to beat you up a little bit here. We're going to run the football. I mean, Josh Allen is still tremendous. Now the tight ends are more popular in this offense. Throwing them the football. Obviously, James Cook had a nice game last night. They're finding out, and he's trying to find out, I think, Josh Allen, who's going to be his guy, who's going to be the number one guy that he can hold on to. As far as when he needs a big play, who am I going to throw it to? Defensively, I thought they did a marvelous job of not allowing any explosive plays, and that's how you got to beat the Dolphins. And look, it's no secret they're 13-1 against Miami, so that kind of tells the story there. But with that being said, you still got to go do it. And I think their defense was really good. They tackled well, didn't allow the big explosive play. And then when they got a lead, finally Von Miller showed up. I mean, I've been kind of waiting on that. Guy made all that money in last year. Didn't play very well, to be quite honest. But the rush got after him, and I just thought, for the most part, it was a solid game by this football team.
Herm, how far are you willing to take it with Buffalo as far as projections for this season? Like you said, they got a different look about them. What do you think it means going down the line?
Well, I think they're the favorite to win this division. I think the Jets will play much better than they did against San Francisco. I mean, that's that team is that 49er team. They're a different animal. I mean, you're talking about they were like the old Buffalo Bills teams when they were always going and getting in the playoff, winning their division, and going to Super Bowls. And they've kind of got the same thing going on right now themselves. They can't seem to win one. But I would discount that game for the Jets, and I think they're going to get better. But I do think this is a Buffalo team that obviously can win this division. And then from there, who knows? I mean, I think Baltimore's still a good football team. Cincinnati stumbled a little bit. Pittsburgh always finds a way to win. Cleveland, I think, they got to have a better showing than the first game of the season. Deshaun Watson, which just wasn't very good, to be quite honest. Houston, they're Houston, and it's no fluke what they were able to do last year. The surprising team to me is Jacksonville. I thought they were going to be a little bit better. We'll see. Last year was not very good. This year, okay, I'm watching. And then you got the guys, right? You got the Kansas City Chiefs. And at the end, it all starts there and it all stops there. Who can beat the Chiefs in playoff competition? That's all that matters for some of these teams to continue getting the playoffs. You're going to face Patrick Mahomes. Can you beat him? That's going to be the key.
Yeah. Herm, obviously talking about everything, the overarching topic of last night's game was the health of Tua. Where are you at with that? And, how tough was that to watch? And, being a former player, coach, all of that type of stuff, where do you lie on Tua's future?
Well, I was on today. They had me come on today, Sports Center, and, I made it perfectly clear. You can't force the player to retire. You can't do that. But if I'm the head coach, I'm definitely guiding the conversation that way. Because here's the problem, guys. At the end of the day, if he decides to come back and you have to play him, and that happens again, I mean, what does that look like? How do you deal with that? I dealt with this with when I was in Kansas City, right? And it was the same kind of situation for Trent Green. Now, he was older, got concussed, a bad one. I mean, a real bad one against Cincinnati Bengals. It was like, I think, the first game of the season. And, he was out for a week or two, and then we had this conversation, and the more I kept talking to him and his family and everybody else, he ended up retiring. And, he never looked back. Now, he's 38 years old. I get it. Tua is much younger. But, guys, this is his fourth one that we know of. Mm-hmm. You can't risk it. And so that's kind of where it's at. And going forward, I think if you're the Miami Dolphins, and I mentioned it today, I mean, you got to be in the market of trying to get a quarterback. The guy that I mentioned, I think he's in Indy, is Joe Flacco. Go try to trade for Joe Flacco, because you still have the offensive firepower there. You still have a pretty good football team, a lot of football games left. But I would go after Joe Flacco, make a trade, see if I can get some draft choices, get the guy, and that way it gives you a chance.
If you're the owner down in Miami, and I believe he's a Michigan alumni, do you call Tom Brady, or is that ship just sailed by now?
Captain America?
Yeah.
You want to call Captain America? Get him on television?
Why not? Get him out of the booth.
That's another one. Yeah, you can call Captain America. Be interested to see if he wants to dabble. But it comes a point, and I saw this, and this is the problem, guys. And I played it. I played professional football, and so I have a little bit of edge on people that haven't played it in this sense. Is that the older quarterbacks? Here's the problem, guys. They don't want to get hit. When you hit them, when they hit the ground, it really hurts. Like bad. Okay? And, I was fortunate to go into Philly. A guy that I walked to with practice every day was Roman Gables, the backup quarterback. And he taught me how to be a professional football player, Roman Gables. And as we had conversations every day in training camp, that's when they had real training camp, 6 preseason games, training camp for 2 months, basically. And by the way, the starters, the players, you played the preseason games. That was kind of the deal. I get to wear my baseball hat and I play. And we would walk every day. And, the more I would talk to him, I said, you're an older. And he looked at me and said, the one thing about getting old, Herm, he says, my brain can go. I can still throw it. He says, but I don't want to get hit. Hurts. And I'll never forget that conversation. And he's right. And I've watched. You guys are watching the football. You watch these older quarterbacks when they get into their high 30s, almost 40 years old, guys. Can you imagine what that feels like at that age?
Well, it's incredible.
It sounds fun. Go get this guy. It sounds fun. Go get this guy. Yeah, for the fans. But he's the one that has to get out there and get hit and pick himself up. It ain't no fun for him.
No kidding, man. That's the amazing thing about Brady, that he played until he was 45 or whatever. Like,
What is he right now?
Did you watch him in
47?
the pocket?
Yeah.
Did you watch him in the pocket? How fidgety he was in that pocket?
Mm-hmm. By the end?
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Hard.
It's tough. It is tough with Herm Edwards. I mean, you look at Allen last night. We talked about the Bills, but that looks like a guy who you can't hit. I don't remember the last time he got crushed. I'm not trying to put that out into the universe. I don't want to.
Looks like he doesn't
happen.
care if you do hit him either, Hayes.
It almost feels like, come get some, please.
You know who he is? He's John Elway.
Mm-hmm.
He's John Elway, guys. I played against John when he first came in the league. He's a rookie, Denver. Same, big, strong, run, man, powerful. You know, and he plays a little like John Elway. John Elway was like that. He just had he's careless at times with his body. Now, Josh Allen's got I'm a Josh Allen fan, guys. If I'm picking up a football team and I can't have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's my guy. I take him any day of the week. I got him. He's on my team. He's more than a quarterback. He's a good football player. He just plays football, right? And and people get on him all the time. Last year, I said, man, this dude threw 40. He had 44 touchdown passes, and people were talking about, well, he's supposed to be intercepted. I don't care. He threw 44 touchdown passes, running and passing, guys. You know how hard that is to do? This ain't Pee Wee League. It's the NFL.
Well, I get the sense that, and this probably applies in every sport where there's like the one top dog, and Mahomes is clearly that everyone not named Mahomes gets criticized and held to his standard, which is just impossible to meet. You're not going to meet the standard of Mahomes. And as a result, I think maybe we look past how great Josh Allen's been, how great Lamar Jackson's been, where if Mahomes didn't exist, which is, again, easy to say, but he does. But if he didn't, it would be like, look how great this guy is. Like, Allen probably has a Super Bowl, maybe 2 by now. Lamar's maybe got one if he doesn't have to run into Mahomes. And it's just like the Mahomes bar is so high and it's so in your face that these other guys just can't meet it, and people just can't get past that.
That is a correct statement. And, when you look back at the history of the National Football League, there's eras that you can run into. If you're playing in the wrong era, depending on what the team is, and generally that quarterback has a lot to do with it, you may go 10 years and you're a really good football team, a la Captain America and the New England Patriots. If you were in the AFC, you weren't going to the Super Bowl because of that guy. Mm-hmm. Back in the 70s, the late 70s into the 80s, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before that, it was listen to this. People don't remember this. It was the Oakland Raiders. They had those runs, right?
Right.
The Dallas Cowboys had some runs in there. Jerry still talks about it. 29 years ago, but he still talks about it. So I just think sometimes I would tell players, sometimes you're born in the wrong era, man. If you got a dominant team that makes a run for 10 years, you could be a really good football team and have a really good quarterback, but you ain't going through those dudes, and you look at your career is kind of like, well, what just happened? Yeah, well, that's you. Wrong era, wrong time.
Yeah, you ran into the wrong era. Exactly. Always great catching up with you, Herm. We appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
There's Herm Edwards of ESPN. That'd be a good list to put together, like the worst era to be a part of in any sport, where like now it's probably Mahomes. I guess you could say over the last 20 years it would be tough because it was Brady into Mahomes. I think if you're a great tennis player the last 25 years and you're not Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic, like Andy Murray.
Yeah.
If those three guys were never born or never got into tennis, Andy Murray might have 10 Grand Slams.
What
12,
about
15.
golfing? What about golfer in the do you know how many majors Phil and Ernie and VJ were just chucked Duval?
Right. Without Tiger, that's what is that, 15 that you divvy up between those guys? And Phil takes at least 2 or 3 of those.
Men,
I would think.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're right, Ernie Els. You could go down a long list of different eras where it's like I just ran into a guy, LeBron forever. Michael Jordan in the 90s. What are you going to do? Second best team. If you're John Stockton and Karl Malone, you're like, what do you want us to do? We can't compete with this guy.
Well, the Leafs, to a certain degree, Hayes, they're in an era here where they've had the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Boston Bruins,
Florida Panthers.
It's like, but that's just the way it is. You either get through and do it or you don't. That's the team element of it, where they've gone on a run here where there's like, how many finals have been in the Atlantic Division? There's Tampa 3 times, Florida a couple times, no?
Montreal in 21.
Montreal was in there.
Montreal.
It's
like,
funny
yes,
to say that.
Boston in 19.
It's a deep run for the division. You're in a tough division. And guess what? Again this year, you qualify for the playoffs, which you most likely will. You are getting Boston, Tampa, or Florida in the first round. And that's just the way it is. Difficult, but
it's true.
No other way around it.
Ask Winnipeg and Calgary when the Oilers were doing all that, because Winnipeg was a hell of a team. Dale Howardchuk and Randy Carlo. Calgary had Hall of Famers on it, but it was the Edmonton Oilers that owned that Smythe division. It was called. You're right. Like you go. Every sport, there's legends, and there's probably teams or players that should have been there, but there was one dominant team or person that's like, sorry, not again. Like
can't do it.
And Noodles, there's other air. Like, I played in the Southeast Division that was trash. Like, you just had to put together some type of squad. Washington was brutal. Atlanta, Tampa was brutal. Florida was brutal. And Carolina. It was just like, you put a squad of any sort on that ice, you could go home division champs.
Yep. And you'd be the 3 seed, remember? It was always the winners of the division were 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, you would be a 3 seed.
Would be like 84 points.
Yeah.
3
seed, 79 points. Playing a home ice advantage against a 104-point team.
Yeah, exactly.
Home ice advantage in the first 2 rounds, possibly. Reseeding. It's like, we're going to ride that all the way to the promised land. You guys might have done that in 02 because you had home ice in the Leafs. Pretty sure. I'll bet you won your division in 02.
We didn't have home ice on the Leafs.
You didn't have home ice? The Leafs had game 1 and 2 in Toronto?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know because I scored the overtime winner in game 1.
That was game 1 you scored. Okay, I thought that was game 3 for some reason.
No.
All right.
There
Well, you would know it. It was you. It was your life. It was your
You know what? I got a nice picture. If I can find it, I'm going to sign it to you and say, Hayes, it's a picture of the actual goal. I'm going to just say, I hope this kicked you right in the junk.
Game 1, it does. It did, man. I remember that vividly. That was the best chance they had. It was a good team. And you guys, to your credit, found a way to get the win. All right, we've got Frankie coming up. We've got Dear Hazy B coming up. And Luke Wilson with more picks. Al's brother, again, will not be joining Hayes and Bro this afternoon. He is on the ayahuasca retreat. That will continue. It was positive vibes for us last night because of that. So we'll see what we've got in store later this afternoon. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, I'm legitimately concerned because you have no idea about your own career. And I'm actually... I'm kind of happy with this because I remembered this better than you did, and you actually played in the game and scored and were living it. I was like 19 in college running a casino in Goond every night, and I have better memories than you.
What are you talking about?
The 2002 conference championship, Leafs Carolina. Carolina had home ice. Your OT winner was game 3. It's not wrong. I'm staring at it. I'm looking at it right now. Game 3, May 21st, 2002. Carolina 2, Toronto 1, OT. Jeff O'Neill. Game 1 that year, Game 1, May 16th, Toronto wins 2-1 in Carolina.
Game 1?
Yes. The Leafs were up 1-0. You guys won in OT in Game 2 and in Game 3. And in Game 6.
Didn't he say he did have home ice, or he said the Leafs had home ice?
No, he said the Leafs had home ice, and he said his OT winner was Game 1.
I would have bet my life savings we started in.
You started in Carolina. Like, those 2 games were just a blur for you. You were not paying attention, evidently. And this series is wild to look at. It actually kind of reminds me of the modern Leafs now. Like, we're harping on the Leafs for not scoring goals. The aggregate score of this series through 6 games was Carolina 10, Toronto 6.
Oh, my God.
The Leafs scored 6 goals in 6 games and somehow won twice.
That's insane.
Yeah.
They had no business losing to us, unfortunately. Like they just systematically, if they had that down pat where everything was dialed in, and it's not a shot at Pat Quinn, who was their coach, but we just knew that if we stuck with it, they would, they just would get loose, and they would. I don't know. It was a fine margin. The margin was slim. We didn't exactly roll over them. It was Game 6. Mm-hmm. But if they were just tighter, they would have spanked us. They had Cujo and net, man. They had a good decor. I don't know.
Yeah.
We had some players that played good. I played good. Ronnie Francis played good. Our everybody played good, but they had no business losing to us.
Yeah, that game. Ron Francis scored on the power play in the first period to make it 1-0. Cabers scored on the power play in the second period to tie it up.
Ugly face.
And then Jeff O'Neill at 6:01 of the first overtime period from Ron Francis and Brett Hedican. Hetty got on there twice. He had
nice.
He had 2 assists in that game, Brett Hedican. There you go. All right.
You ever want to see a guy scrambling? When Matt Sundin tied it up with 3 seconds left in Game 6 to go to overtime, I was running around my own zone. If somebody put a libero on that, it's embarrassing.
We got to pull that shift up. We'll get into it at the 5 o'clock hour.
We'll find it. Frankie Corrado coming up in the next hour. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.